Party's not a party's a man who fights crime, and we're gonna watch him fight for a minute at a time with John and Niall and a guest who doesn't rhyme. It's Bat Minutes! Hello everyone, time to scream. And time once again for Bat Minutes and Robin, the podcast where we break down and inflate in gruesome detail every minute of Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin, 1 minute at a time. I am one of the hosts, Niall McGowan.
And here to stimulate your reptilian brain and make you inflate, it is your other host, John Parker.
And waiting in the wings for one final time with
Say it!
Patient. It is returning from Time Warp Radio, Katie Tomeny and Hayley Mervini.
Hi. Thanks for having us. This is great.
You've got to do the accent on that. You have to go, patient.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, we're here to talk about minute 18 of Batman and Robin. Minute 18 begins with a restrained Bane, and it ends a minute later with some animation inflation. So
we end with making a meh.
Not to spoil anything, John. That is worked into the outro. So.
Oh!
Yes.
I should be. Like, you can tell I was into Rocky Horror. The fact that the outros are never usually that tailored to the guests' movies and stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, but it was just like, oh no, I need to go to town with these ones.
Usually they're written like well in advance. It's like, I don't know, they can have whatever. Yeah. So you've pushed the boat.
But this is particularly, I get to work in Rocky Horror lines. Oh, fantastic. But yeah. So we do get Antonio Diego getting slapped on to this actually quite nicely padded slab. I was quite surprised that you put like a mattress down for him. I thought that was a bit weird.
You got to think about his comfort.
He's gonna be thrashing around. They don't want him to bruise himself.
I was thinking too, like initially I was thinking when they're putting his hands in the shackles, he's kind of doing weird things with his fingers. And I was like, that's not going to help you, buddy. But then I was remembering, because I know friends in the BDSM community have said, like, doing things with your fingers, when you're restrained, when your mouth is restrained, that's supposed to be a safety signal. Oh. So it could be, he's like, I'm not into this anymore, would you? Get me out of here, man.
So in his private life, he's a kinkster.
Yeah. That's where the mask come from. He's
just
that's
like, why he's into Bane.
Yeah. This whole apparatus, like the thing strapped around his waist and crotch, that's very fetishy.
And a particular note about that coming up.
Oh, wow. You've got one?
Oh, yeah. But,
okay.
I think it's standard, John. I always wear that out most nights as well, but I'm surprised you've never noticed it.
You're wearing it right now.
Yeah, it's not very comfortable, and I keep cutting my hands on the spikes, but still.
You love that. That's all part of the pleasure.
Should also mention, though, I did allude earlier in the week to a massive everything's connected. And while you were going through the Charles... What's his name?
Charles Atlas?
No, not Charles Atlas, but Michael Reed McKay. I don't know where I was getting Charles from.
Yeah, what the hell?
Michael Reed McKay. Talked about him a little bit last minute, but he does have... it's almost like the culmination of a bunch of everything's connected with this guy, because he notably played in the early 2000s Charles Manson.
Whoa!
In a Beach Boys biopic.
Amazing.
Because I actually remember one time when I was supposed to be studying for my A-levels, I sat and watched all 5 hours of that Beach Boys biopic. Because it's, at the time, you'll do anything to not be studying, basically.
Yes.
So
was it worth it?
Well, the fact that I remember a little bit of it was like, oh, I guess that was okay. But it was one of those ones, I don't think they even had any of the music. It was just like, we don't have the license to have Beach Boys songs. It's just about them. But notably, because people don't know, Charles Manson and Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys were like buddies for a while.
Yeah.
The Beach Boys recorded a Charles Manson song at one point.
They did. They changed the lyrics, but it was based on a song that he had written, yeah.
Yeah, I think that their version of it was called "Never Stop Learning to Love,"
Yes.
And his original title was Cease to Exist, which
Whoa.
is much more Charlie Manson.
Yeah,
Whoa.
but to be fair, right? Like, we're looking at it retrospectively because at the time, he was just an aspiring musician who didn't outwardly, at least, talk about these things. So, who's the main Beach Boys guy?
Brian Wilson.
Yes, him. He took him in. I think he lived with him.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
that's Dennis Wilson.
Oh, is it
That was
Dennis who he lived with? I knew he lived with one of them.
Yeah. The thing is, though, he was basically very outwardly a cult leader at this point, though, because in the Everything's Connected vein, Dennis Wilson, should also note, in that biopic, is played by Bruce Greenwood, who has played Batman many, many times. And the inspiration behind Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Brad Pitt picks up one of the Manson girls hitchhiking. It's actually Margaret Qualley. It's Andy McDowell's daughter. That's inspired by how Dennis Wilson kind of met Charles Manson. He picked up two of the Manson girls hitchhiking, and then they were like, "Oh, you should meet our buddy Charlie. He's like this great spiritual leader.
Oh,
like
that's
you'd love him
weird.
and stuff." And then
that is weird.
Dennis Wilson left them at his house. So they're like, oh, okay, you can stay there for a while. Came back and they just filled his house with random people. And Charles Manson was also there. And that's how he came to be introduced to him. But also should say, of course, the fact that that's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, of course, made by Quentin Tarantino. And Quentin Tarantino's muse, he has said several times, is, of course, Uma Thurman. Of course, who was in these very minutes.
Didn't they have a relationship?
I think there was some sort of allusions to something happening. Yeah. But I don't like to think about Quentin Tarantino hooking up with anybody, quite frankly.
I think it's a lot of foot play.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't think Quentin actually has sex with anyone. I think he sits in a closet and films other people having sex and is masturbating in the closet.
If that's your kink, fair play. Do it.
I'm not gonna yuck your yum, but it's just
That's just what I picture him doing. Like when I picture Quentin Tarantino having sex, it's like not with others in a closet.
Totally. No, I'm
Watching
1,000% behind this idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
That is Tarantino. And I love the way he denies the foot fetish thing. It's like, we've watched your
Yes.
movies.
And it's
We all
actually
know.
him filming it. They're all under covers in the bed.
just
It's
the
just the feet are sticking out under.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's that whole bit in Death Proof where her feet are hanging out the window and Kurt Russell comes by and, touches them.
Yeah. In Kill Bill, like her learning to walk
Move
again.
your toes. Move your
Yeah.
toes. Yeah.
Well,
In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when she gets in the car, she puts her foot on the window and smushes her toes on the window.
Totally natural pose, yes.
Yeah, Sharon Tate in the cinema with her bare feet up on the back. See, it's like, no one does that.
Well, and then famously, I know he didn't direct the movie, but in I'm blanking, the vampire movie.
From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn, she's got her foot in his goddamn mouth.
Yeah. Of course, co-starring George Clooney.
Yeah.
The thing is, I guess, so you got the Quentin Tarantino connection there as well.
Yeah.
Of course, Sharon Tate in that movie, played by Margot Robbie, who played Harley Quinn. And Harley Quinn Smith, Kevin Smith's daughter, is also one of the Manson girls in that movie.
Yes.
But I should say, though, in this being the culmination of a whole bunch of Everything's Connected, this dates back to, way back at the beginning of Batman at 89, because, of course, we brought up Charlie Manson before, because Sharon Tate went out with Jack Palance, of course, at one point, with Carl Grissom, in Batman 89, and also she was the wife of Roman Polanski, who, of course, close friends with Jack Nicholson, did some very horrific things.
I was going to say,
Jack
don't
Nicholson's
bring him
house.
up.
Yeah.
We don't talk about him.
No.
It's fine.
But then another person, though, who was killed in the same night as Sharon Tate was a celebrity hairdresser, Jay Sebring. And he and Batman 89 producer, John Peters, they were the inspiration for Warren Beatty's character in the movie Shampoo. And, of course, Warren Beatty, married to Annette Bening, who was going to play Catwoman up until they got pregnant. And then we got Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman instead. So through all that, the specter of Charles Manson haunts this quadrilogy of Batman for some bizarre reason.
This is Charles Manson's Batman.
But this is it could be that this guy, Michael Reed McKay, he's like the linchpin. He might be the pinnacle of it was all leading up to this guy. And this couple of seconds you see of him in the movie.
Yeah.
And it was it all blends together. And now it feels like it's done. Will there be any more Charles Manson connections? No.
We'll
was the end
see.
of all of them.
We'll
And
see.
this is the end of Batman and Robin. Goodbye.
Once the Manson stuff's done, we're out. That's all we're here.
It turns out then, like, oh no, apparently Arnold Schwarzenegger and Charles Manson used to like live together or something.
They used to work out at Gold's Gym. Yeah.
They spotted each other.
Well, it's funny because Charlie Manson was like 5'4" or something. Like he was a very tiny man. So him and Arnold Schwarzenegger together, I'd love to see it. It's like repeat of twins.
Twins, yes.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Speaking of talking about like the bat nipples, notably on Bane's mask, they've got veins. Well, for a second I thought, like, are they his veins coming through? There's like, no, they've worked veins into the mask to make it look like it's his veins popping out of his head. I guess you could say maybe it's all where the venom's getting pumped into and stuff,
No,
but I think it's more of an aesthetic thing.
It's dumb. This whole, like... Right. The mask. The Bane mask.
Why does he wear the mask?
Why is it a luchador mask? This makes no
he's
sense
South
in
American?
context. That's the only
maybe?
thing. It's in South America. But it's like,
Yeah.
well, did you have to get a luchador mask? Did you have to get a wrestling mask?
I think it's just a kinky thing. This is another thing that when Edward Nygma was, they're going through all the stuff at the police auction. Maybe Sugar and Spice, they had a luchador mask lying around. They're like, yeah, I take that too.
Maybe.
I don't want this luchador mask. $5. There you go.
It's weird. It's very weird. Some luchador masks are creepy, but this is like a normal luchador mask. See, I really like the wrestler Pentagon El Zero Miedo. And he
We
has
watched a wrestling match with Pentagon Jr.
Oh, see, that's his name in South America. This is how nerdy I am. In America, because he's not allowed the copyright on it, he's changed it. So in AEW, he's Pentagon El Cero Miedo, which is Pentagon No Fear. Yeah.
I love it.
So, yeah, but his mask is, like, scary.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when he was in Lucha Underground, he actually did, like, a weird thing where he, like, melted a candle onto it. And it looked even scarier. It was weird. So why doesn't Bane have something like that? This is just a regular luchador mask. I don't know. He looks like the Blue Demon, the famous
I just
old
think they
luchador.
needed a really good mask for when he's going to be in that not so secret disguise later in the trench coat to be like, oh no, that's still Bane. He's wearing a luchador mask.
At one point, though, he's in disguise as a giant pink gorilla, and he's still got the goddamn mask on. So.
He can't take it off. It keeps the serum flowing, I guess.
I think that's the thing that, weirdly enough, Chris Nolan swipes, where there's like, I think, yeah, he's got this, the serum's flowing through him all the time. And then when Chris Nolan was like, I'm doing Bane, and he wears that mask specifically so he has this pain-killing medicine going through him all the time. Well, where it's just like, in the comics, it's just more like, yeah, he just has this mask on. I think it's an allusion to his, his heritage and things like this. But
I think I prefer that because, like, I know it makes sense in this movie, and they kind of wanted to get it over and done with, but this transformation sequence is too quick for me. I think it should be a longer process. You know, you inject the guy daily over months and months and months.
But you want the film to be like 2 months long or something?
Yeah, well, you can allude to it with like a montage or something, you know.
It's like keeps cutting occasionally to Pam in the eyes, so he's sitting smoking behind that thing. It's like, geez, are they done with this yet?
It's very quick. But I like the effects, so I'm kind of torn. Like, the effect of him transforming is pretty cool.
Does it need to be a quick transformation so that way he's just as easily defeated? That it's a quick deformation?
I guess, yeah.
You know?
But that's like, I do have a theory as to why Bane's mask looks the way it is. And it is tied into what they end up injecting him with here. Because now we're introduced to Venom. Which is... well, the thing is, before they even call it Venom, Jason Woodrue specifically calls it his super soldier serum. Yeah. Which is, like, that's... I can imagine if Marvel wasn't in, like, the gutter in the mid-90s, where they just had, like, they sold off their film rights to everything, and the company couldn't make a Marvel movie to save your life back in the mid-90s.
The comics were dead.
Because this is the origin of Captain America. Like, there's very much more, like, even when they did Bane in the comics, it was like, oh yeah, he was already a very physically fit guy, but they just made him more powerful with this Venom stuff. This is doing the flat out, oh yeah, Steve Rogers, scrawny, sickly kid.
Yep.
Buffed up into super soldier, and the fact they even call it a super soldier serum, which is what they specifically called it in friggin' the Captain
But I
America
like the
comics.
twist that it's like, what if that was used in a nefarious way?
The thing is, I'm pretty sure Marvel Comics would have done that as well.
Oh yeah,
And they're like, yeah,
I think they very well have done.
yeah, it's 100%. So I think they could probably sit in there. That's what Kevin Feige was sitting in the cinema in the mid-90s, like, I'm gonna get you, Schumacher. I'm gonna get my revenge someday. I'm gonna make the greatest cinematic universe, the thing that eclipses all other entertainment in about 30 years' time.
And if you want me to get very technical as well, right? I researched, because they bring up that he's drilled holes into his head, and he's gonna, affect the primitive part of his brain.
His limbic system.
Well, that's the thing. So I researched it because I was like, well, what's the primitive part of the brain? And it came up with limbic system. And I was like, oh, okay, they keep going on about that in one of my favorite games of all time, Disco Elysium. But I was researching all of these kind of things and like seeing what people thought. And there's a scientist, Paul D. McLean, who developed a bunch of brain theories and things like this. And he hypothesized that the limbic system is older than other parts of the brain. Well, the forebrain, to be specific. And it developed to manage a circuitry attributed to the fight or flight response. He considered it part of survival adaptation in reptiles as well as mammals. That's why it's also called the reptilian brain.
Oh.
See, this is why these are interchangeable terms. The reptilian brain. And that comprises the structures of the brain stem, medulla, pons, cerebellum, something else I can't say. Jesus Christ. Mesencephalon?
Sure.
All this kind
You're
of
doing
nonsense.
great.
This is very... it's too much. But... Anyway, yes, the limbic system.
The fight or flight systems, and that it's like the primitive part of the brain. That's so interesting. Yeah, that they're injecting him right to that place.
Yeah, because I thought, that's just a term people use. It's made up. It's nonsense. But no, it is a real thing. And, there are parts of the brain of superior mammals, like primates and things, where this is more developed and whatnot. Even though it comes from reptilians in this theory, but it's kind of grown and developed, but it's there always. I find that quite interesting. They call them superior mammals, but they still have this.
The fact that the whole business of drilling into Bane's brain is in the comics and stuff as well. But I was just like, it's ruining my box headcanon about him sucking out his intelligence with the box.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird. It's like this whole thing is supposed to superpower your muscles is going in through the brain and stuff. But the thing is, though, the first mention of Venom in the comics is from Legends of the Dark Knight number 16 from 1991, and it had nothing to do with Bane. It's actually a really good story where Batman becomes addicted to Venom. I don't think
I like that.
I don't think they even specifically call it Venom at that point. They it's a really good storyline. It's very, very dark though, where it begins where Batman tries to save a kidnapped young girl from drowning, and he can't physically lift the stone to get out of the way. And so he's traumatized by the fact that this little girl died.
This is like
on his
Frankenstein again, when he throws the girl in the water.
So after that, though, he goes to the girl's father to explain, like, this is what happened. And the dad's just, like, he doesn't care. And he's talking about, like, I've designed these drugs. And he's literally lifting up the bag going, you want to try these? They're supposed to help boost your physique and stuff. And so Batman eventually, throughout the 4 issues, he does take this stuff. And it makes him super strong, but it starts affecting him mentally as well, where he can't think clearly enough, and he becomes a deranged nut job, basically. He's become super violent just going around beating the crap out of people for the sake of it, like properly torturing people. And eventually Alfred turns his back on him, everything falls apart, and eventually Batman thinks like, I need to get off this stuff, locks himself in the Batcave for a month to wean himself off it. And you never see what happens to him, except for one panel where they show you him in like almost like a Gollum-esque, like ravenous state, where you just get this one panel of like, that's how bad it was. But
that reminds me of the storyline in The Boys. And I think they literally call it V.
Yeah.
Compound V, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
God, I love The Boys.
But the thing is, like, that's all well and good, but and then, later on, Venom, as it was called, will be later used by Bane when he shows up. And the thing is, that's all very similar to the black suit storyline in Spider-Man. When he got that black suit, an alien suit attached itself to him, and it made Peter Parker super strong, but it made him a deranged psychopath who beat up people for no goddamn good reason.
It made him emo. Yeah.
It made him have an awesome musical number.
That's from, this is Legend of the Dark Knight 91. That's back in 1984. And then, of course, the symbiote suit goes on to attach itself to Eddie Brock, and then they call themselves Venom.
Yeah.
And they have big black head, big white angular eyes. And it's like, oh, DC, you're just totally ripping off Marvel again. It's like an ongoing saga of just like, hey, super soldiers, we're still all of it. What is Marvel going to do? They're in the toilet. They're not doing anything. They'll never come back from this.
Yeah, I thought when I saw it, I was like, is this a Spider-Man tie-in? As a non-comic book reader.
Well, I get it. It feels that way. Yeah.
But just call the stuff something else. Don't call it Venom, as if they're trying to stick it to them. By like, yeah, that's right, we're taking your storyline, and now we're going to make Bane the biggest villain of the 90s, which is a thing they really, really tried to do. But yeah, so we got Jason Woodrue. Of course, it's time to screen. Oh, actually, before that, though, we still have to talk about we got a little close-up of the ununited nations, as it were, here.
Yes.
And yeah, we got to see in there, of course, John, you'll be happy to see the Iron Sheik himself is there.
Yeah. Yep, break your back, make you humble.
Yeah. Although, actually, that's one thing as well. Like Pamela Isley is eyeing us from hiding behind a box, and this thing that's on top of the box, it looks like it could be like a thing of ammo, but it also kind of looks like a metal back brace, and so it looks a bit like a spine. I'm wondering if it's supposed to be an allusion to the fact that Bane breaks Batman's spine.
Had he broken it by this point?
Oh yeah, that was Bane's whole purpose. Was that was all they were building up to it with him? Was like he's the guy who breaks the Batman.
I didn't know if that was like later, like.
Oh no, that's right up front. That was like his mission statement from day one. But yeah, I wonder if that was a little like throw in a little thing that looks a bit like a spine before the Bane origin story, because he ain't going to actually break. If Bane broke George Clooney's back during this would be a very different movie. But.
The ununited nations, right? I'm fascinated with them because this gang of potential buyers, it's a motley crew because you've got a Saudi Arabian, you have a Cuban, an African. I'm not sure what country. I know Africa's not a country, people, but they're playing stereotypes. Generic African warlord guy, and then at the end, Chinese or Korean. I can't decide. That sounds awful. Could go either way with 90s American film. But the first two I found the most interesting, right? Because we have a Russian, which of course it's an American movie. Of course they're going to make fun of Russia. But the first one, is that an American?
Oh yeah, that is 100%. Could be this movie is criticizing American.
It is
corruption and that. Like,
oh yeah, 100%. Are you talking about the guy that looks like he's a military?
Yeah.
Leader.
That was fascinating to me. It's like, oh, a big budget Hollywood silly camp superhero movie has thought like, you know what, an American soldier is there as well. He's buying for America.
That's where you know that, like, the other stuff you guys are talking about with it having allusions to Greek mythology, like, that is the ultimate purpose of movies, are a bunch of artists who can see the problems with reality and can see the, like, evil that is occurring and understand that they're never going to get funding for a movie that's anti-capitalism, anti-military, pro-environmentalism. Like, they have to very subtly slip in that you think that these arms deals are happening with the world's greatest leaders, and you don't think that includes America? You don't think that America is not involved in evil dealings?
Exactly.
That's a quite colonial way of looking at things.
Well, and then it's quite funny that there's... I genuinely find this hilarious that there's no British presence. No, because we're awful. Throughout history, we tend to be awful. But I love that we're not there, because when was Britain last relevant on the world stage? The end of World War II.
Oh, I'm sure it's just that the Prince Philip himself is there, John, but he's just off, like, being racist to, like, you know, some random women outside or something.
Well,
got lost in the way in.
You know, despite what our awful goddamn... I don't want to say patriots, that sounds very American. But, you know, what the big nationalists think. We're not an important nation. We're not. We haven't been for a long time. So I love that we're not here. We shouldn't be here, because why the hell would we be?
I think my favorite thing, though, in the lineup of the Ununited Nations is that to make it even more obvious that the Castro guy is Cuban, they have to have the cigars sticking out of his breast pocket.
It's like so unsubtle. It's like, oh, you just make him look like Castro. I don't know.
It's like, oh yeah, but it's just like also like in case people still don't get it, there's a couple of Cuban cigars. It's like, yeah, I know subtlety's not your strong suit, Joel Schumacher, but Jesus Christ, dude.
I'll tell you what, because I'm a dirty lefty, I may have brought it up before, but I recommend everybody watches Oliver Stone's Comandante, which is where he just sort of hangs out with Fidel Castro for a few weeks. And I thought it was a great documentary. And you learn that at that time, at least, Castro had dropped the cigars because he's like, oh, it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy. I'm trying to be fit. And he was like doing exercises in his office, just walking around in circles around the desk, like, oh, yep. And he had the cigar case still on his desk. So Oliver Stone's like, well, what's in that then? He opens it up and it's just like a box of sweets. He's got candy in there. Like, here you go.
That's nice.
It's like he's so close though to the Ben Horn, just like taking out, like the only thing of taking out a cigar out of his breast pocket, but it's a carrot or something.
It's great. I love it.
So people criticize that storyline in Twin Peaks. I laughed every time he did that. I thought it was amazing.
Every single bit of Twin Peaks is good. Even the Evelyn storyline. Screw you, fans. Yeah. I hate you all. If you don't like the Evelyn thing, you're dead to me.
The thing is, though, as big a fan I am of the Ununited Nations here, I kind of wish they'd gone even further, and this was like the Injustice gang from the comics, and you had like a floating top hat with a cape and a monocle. It's like, it's Gentleman Ghost, and there's Polka Dot Man, and like.
But they want to satirize, the world.
You can do that. You can have Gentleman Ghost be a communist or whatever.
Well, I am annoyed.
Put some floating cigars in his breast pocket. There you go. The illusion's done.
As a horrible red, I am upset by the makeup of the Ununited Nations. Because the Cuban is there. When has a Cuban ever sought out weapons of mass destruction? The Russian here, I get it. Their government at the time would 100% be like, we're going to spend money on useless crap.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what would you call Bane useless crap? Like he's 1,000,001 uses.
Well, he does. He's an interesting prospect.
But in many ways, they could be doing a flat out Rocky Horror thing. It's like Bane also is a pleasure model.
Oh.
You can use him.
Yes.
Well,
as soon as he's pumped up, he just starts doing like the sword of Damocles.
Can somebody please
I loved that
do that?
Poison Ivy made the reference that he's the action figure that comes in her pack.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
That he is. I loved that they seemed just aware of being in a comic book also being aware of being in a movie. Because...
But apparently that was a thing that John Glover has said, like on set constantly. Joel Schumacher would get out his megaphone and go, "Remember, everybody, this is a cartoon," and then just call action. So that's why everything's just like, yeah.
It's honest.
It's just weird though that he is a guy from a Batman cartoon that was much more subdued than this. So he's like, when I was in the cartoon, I was like treating it very seriously, but now I'm in live action. I have to treat it as if it's crazy crap.
In the best way.
But yeah, I have to say though, one thing is that I believe the scripts and the novelization, everything else refers to venom as being a very milky-like substance.
Yeah.
And they've changed it to yellow here, and I can't feel it's because like we can't have him getting pumped through like white sticky stuff. That's a bit too graphic, Joel. Like
That's it's not. This movie was already too gay.
yeah, they're just like dial it back. We'll give you the nipples, but dial back everything else. We'll give you the cod pieces and stuff.
Plus, you hear the word venom. I don't know about you, but to me, I think of like green and things like that. It's a venomous color. It's probably why it's my favorite color. And I love that it has that name, the deadly sounding name. It's stupid in the best way possible. Venom. It's like,
Because then you know right off the bat that it's like, well, you don't want to get injected with that stuff.
You don't want to be venom.
maybe you do.
That doesn't sound like the thing you want injected directly into your flight or flight receptor.
No. And clearly the good doctor here doesn't give a goddamn about it because when he's pouring it in, he spills it everywhere, which you may have noticed.
The thing is, though, it's not his. It's like, oh, this is Pamela Isley, so I don't care what
True.
if I spill some. That's her problem.
I can get more of this crap, yeah.
I think I'll just nip in and steal some more later. I have to say, though, I kind of felt like, oh, this is going to be really dated-looking special effects. But it's actually like, I think that him blowing up is actually really, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I like it. I think it looks great.
It's got a kind of, it is CGI, but it's got a kind of stop motion quality to it, which makes it look very, very, it just looks bizarre and sci-fi. And it's just like, yeah, this actually works perfectly for what they're doing. We'll have to say though, if you guys have the minutes up to hand, but I couldn't help but notice, and it is there, because everything about this guy suddenly gets huge. And if you keep an eye on his codpiece, a noticeable bulge dents in the codpiece as he.
Well,
so his penis apparently does grow 10 times that
you've got to.
I know what I'm going to be doing when we're done recording is rewatching that scene now.
It's in. If you got the minute, it kicks in at about second 50.
Well,
so.
you've got to keep everything. You've got to keep everything in proportion. Yeah.
Apparently, though, according to the Nightfall novelization, venom makes you impotent. So I guess if Bane is honest, like I've got the gun, but I can't do anything with it. Damn it!
Oh, that's not fair.
Well, I was gonna ask, do you think he's susceptible to Ivy's charms and her pheromones, and like, could she kiss Bane, and would he survive it?
He doesn't seem to react to her in that way. He seems to more be like a simpering fool for her.
He's an instant simp.
Yeah.
But it seems to be more like it's like he what do they call it? Like in Twilight or whatever, when the baby's born. It's like
imprinting?
Ivy's the it's like it's kind of like Ivy's the first person he sees who's not dead. So she's like, okay, I guess this is my mother now, or.
Oh God, he's got a mommy complex.
I immediately knew what you were talking about.
But yeah, as we're saying, very, very much more Rocky Horror than it is Frankenstein, though. So
it feels so Rocky Horror. Watching these minutes, I was like, there's like a crazy guy with people who we're not going to hear anything else about the United Nations. We just now know that they exist.
I love that they call
themselves
that, presumably.
Yeah, I wish it was like Christopher Biggins was up there playing one of these guys. Though he would be the English guy, so they couldn't get Biggins.
Transylvanian up there, so that you do go. Wait, is that like a Transylvanian from Rocky Horror?
It's kind of like the opera glasses coming out. Like, oh, there you go. As soon as the bulge appears in the codpiece, like, the opera glasses come out.
Yes, that'd be perfect. Oh, baby, Bane.
I will say also, though, as much as I do enjoy these special effects, it is a little bit of the time, because it also reminds me a little bit of the Nutty Professor, the Eddie Murphy version that was out there, because when he turns back into Sherman Klump, like towards the end, and they start doing like balloon effects of his hand blowing up and his ass
And
blowing
somehow
up
it
and
looks
things
worse
like that.
than this.
It does look way. This is actually like weirdly enough, this is the superior version of that. But yeah, I don't know, have you guys got any other thoughts about Rocky Bane here? About would he look better at this cod piece with some gold hot pants?
Why?
But yeah, I think we noted out for this minute. Is there anything anyone wants to bring up about minute 18 in particular?
Were you gonna ask me what the worst movie I've ever seen is?
Oh yeah, I was just like before like finishing the business of the minute, and then it's
perfect. Then yes,
Hayley's jumping at the bit.
I'm good with the minute.
I wanted to be like the ultimate tease and just be like, no, we're not going to talk about it now. Just like stop the call. But yes, of course, Hayley, as you alluded to there, Batman and Robin, renowned worldwide by many people as being one of the worst films ever made. But I was wondering if you guys, do you have your own personal picks for the worst film you've ever seen?
Yes, I thought about this. And then it ended up being Everything is Batman, because it's also an Uma Thurman movie.
No.
Ah.
The House That Jack Built is a Lars von Trier.
Oh, yeah.
It's upsetting, to say the least, and it's unwatchable, to say the most. Like, it's about a character who is murdering women, literally, and you're watching it from his perspective. So it's just like, so hard to watch. And then they use camera tactics and technique that are designed to make an audience member nauseous. And it is the only movie, when you asked, like, is there any movie that you've never ever shut off, you couldn't finish it? I did finish it because I can't not finish a movie, because there might be something in the last 5 minutes that pay off the whole story. You know what I mean? Like, and I'd hate to write a movie off and then it have a phenomenal ending, you know? And like, I walked out of the theater to take a break because it was just so much that I had to go back in, and I finished it. And I think part of why Lars von Trier made it is for it to be a terrible, like a hard movie to watch. Yeah, and definitely. For you to maybe say it's the worst movie you've ever seen, because that's what he wants you to say.
Yes, like it really does strike you as Lars von Trier's intent would be like, yes, I want to make something that's unwatchable, basically.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
Yeah, he's saying, like, all of my other movies you said were unwatchable. Okay, let me actually give you what you've been critiquing his other works that are not they're all upsetting. All of his movies are really upsetting. But, like, with it being the title of The House That Jack Built, he's saying, look at all of my art. It is my art. Like, you can have opinions on it, but it is the house that I built, and I have to live in it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the perspective of the movie, too. He feels like all his career, he's just been slaughtering women in his movies. So, okay, I'll make a movie about actually slaughtering women, and you'll see how bad it can actually get.
I just feel bad, though, for, like, because that must be like the first starring role that Matt Dillon has had in so long. And he's like, I'm back, baby! Everyone's gonna love me again! And then everyone's like, unwatchable movie, The House of Jack Built. Like, record number of people walking out of festival screenings and stuff. Like, no! Come back!
But Uma is one of the first women in the movie. And, yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm also gonna go with an Everything is Batman and say Suicide Squad is probably the worst movie I've ever watched. And not in the same way. As in, like, it was genuinely a really bad movie.
It wasn't good, was it?
No, it was really bad. But Birds of Prey was incredible.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet because we're going to review it.
You gotta see it, it's so good.
I'm deliberately not watching it until we're going to review it.
But that's exciting then. That'll be fun.
But Suicide Squad, absolutely horrible. Like, I almost turned it off. I rented that movie for like $3.99, and I was like, I am thinking about just not finishing this film. But I was like, God damn it, I paid money for this. I gotta finish it.
I was in the cinema. I had to.
Well, and I really love Birds of Prey because it was directed by a woman. So it's just such a different lens to like view the DC comic universe from a woman's point of view, which it's just so good. I can't spoil it for those of us who haven't seen it yet, but I forced Hayley to watch it because I was like, it's so good. It's so campy and so fun and so well done.
But yeah, I think has anyone got anything else to say about Batman and Robin or?
That was great.
Nope.
I loved these minutes.
Yep.
And I loved the movie.
I'm all noted out.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having
welcome.
us.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. And then we are definitely, you guys will have to announce on your show when you are coming on to continue talking about Richard O'Brien and shock treatment.
Hell yes. And would you like to remind our listeners one more time where your show can be found on the internet?
Yes, we're wherever you can listen to your favorite podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc.
We've got Time Warp Radio and we've got Shock Treat Minute.
Yep. And that's also our handles on Instagram too. So that's where we are most active. And everything has a link in our bio.
Cool. Well, check that out,
Easy to
everybody.
find.
Come and speak to us on Facebook, Batminute Listeners Cave, Twitter, Instagram, all of that. Just look at Batminute. And, go to our Patreon, the Sleepy Charlie Media Patreon, because you get bonus episodes. You get me and Niall talking nonsense about Batman comics like Dark Victory and The Long Halloween. And we will head off now into the dark, dark night. But, always remember that I can make you a super soldier. That almost worked.
I liked it.
Next time, science fiction doubled creature. A venomous new villain carrying the Charles Atlas seal has his identity dictated with virulent zeal.
No one cared about Bane till he put on the mask, but can this Herculean horror show prove he's up to the task? You'll be thrilled, chilled, and fulfilled next week, loyal listeners.
Same Bat Pod, different Bat Minute.
We'll be back.